Welcome back to the Christian Century YouTube channel. I'm John. I'm joined today by one of our writers, Mordechai Beck, who has written a new piece for us called Bibi's Endless War. So we are going to be diving into some of the themes of the conflict. But before we do that, let's hear from you, Mordecai. Can you tell us a little bit more about who you are?
Yeah, I've been living in Israel for 50 years. Although I'm originally English. I do mainly writing and art. And the writing has been for many years mainly on cultural issues. But since October 7th, I've become more and more involved in thinking about and writing about what this war means. I've created what's called a diary. I think I'm up to about the 10th diary, which I publish about my reflections on, what's going on. It's a very unusual situation. I think it's important to people of faith that they connect with our traditions, and our tradition is biblical and, in my case, rabbinical as well.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that with us, and thank you for sending us this reflection to publish. You speak of the connection to the tradition, the biblical tradition. Um, a big part of this article, you make a comparison between things going on right now with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the biblical figure of King Amaziah, not one of the most talked about figures in the Hebrew Bible. Can you tell us a little bit more about why you make that connection between those two figures?
Actually, it came up, funnily enough, because one of the courses that I teach in Zoom, we are dealing with biblical characters in an alphabetical way, and we're in the middle of the A's, and Amatzia came up, Amatzia in Hebrew, and it immediately made me think about what was happening in Israel today. It was just such a natural connection. As I said, the Tanakh in Hebrew, the Tanakh, what we call the Hebrew Bible, is a mountain of metaphors, and these are things which we can pick and choose as we want to see how much they relate to our situation today. The story of Amatzia leapt out, as it were, and I was able to connect it fairly easily, I think, with what was going on.
And anyone who wants to dive into that can read the article. The link to the article will be in the video description below in case anyone missed it. Okay, another fascinating part of this essay you wrote in the middle of the essay. You're very embedded in the sort of media ecosystem in Jerusalem. You're a journalist there yourself. You talk about the reporting on this war and the strength of Hamas. There's these two incredibly different accounts that are being given in the media. One that basically says, we've decimated Hamas. There's almost nothing left of their power. And then the other account that says virtually their strength is unchanged from October 7th, 2023. How do you make sense of these two very different accounts in the media?
Well, it's very much a sense of, who is looking at it. The people who are gung ho and want to tell you that we're succeeding and we're victorious and so on, they will look at the first version and say, well, we've killed the leaders and so on, and we've knocked them out here and knocked them out there. It's very possible that we've weakened them somehow. But then the other people, reporters, and even people in the army have said, well, they're still around Hamas. I mean, they may be weak and so on, but they're still strong enough to lob over missiles almost at will. That's a different way of looking at the reality, which is very complex in a sense.
Yeah, so near the end of the essay, if I read it right, you seem to come to a pretty grim conclusion that it appears Netanyahu is really just trying to expel or kill all the Palestinians and take over all the land.
Yeah.
And when you come to that conclusion, you point to another biblical reference, Ahab and Jezebel. Anyone who maybe forgets that story, can you remind us maybe what happens with them that connects to Netanyahu in your mind?
Okay, let me just take it one step back. My sense of what happened on October the 7th to Mr. Netanyahu was that he was facing the end of his career. When October the 7th happened, he knew immediately that everybody would turn around and say he is responsible. He is the man who shut his eyes to what was going on, who was that was sleeping on the job, as it were, and so when everybody was looking at Hamas and how terrible they were and so on and so forth, Netanyahu saw an opportunity to do what he's always wanted to do, which is to get rid of the Palestinians. He sees them as the main problem for his messianic view of a united Israel, which means no non-Jews or no Palestinians anyway. All his actions since then seem to point to that same goal, and because of that, he's become really absorbed, obsessed, really, with getting rid of uh, the Palestinians in Gaza. You can see that because what he's doing in Gaza is way above what anybody else in that situation would do. There's a sense of burnt fields, of wiping out territory, just making it unlivable, an unlivable space. So that's on one side. That was my sense of what was going on, and I put that as being central to his goal, even more so than Iran or any of the other proxies that were around him, because his main goal was to make Gaza free from Palestinians. Um, Now, I for some time I have been thinking of Mr. and Mrs. Netanyahu in terms of Ahab and Jezebel, his wife, the biblical couple. This was particularly potent in the sense that his wife is very much for everything that her husband does, and she eggs him on, just as Jezebel did. Um, the other thing is now also from my teaching, when we come to King Ahab, the rabbis tell us that he was a very, very smart guy, very smart. So that's another big connection with Bibi, who is a very smart guy. There's no doubt about that. He can use his cleverness for the wrong purpose, and that was the story of Naboth and his vines in the Bible, in which Jezebel encourages her husband Ahab to be a man and to get rid of Naboth because his vineyard is very, very, very nice. And so he does it, and he kills Naboth. And then the prophet Elijah comes and he says to him this famous quote, "Rachatzta v'gam yarashta," which means that you have killed, and now you want to take over the territory that you've killed for. So that I saw that as a very, very powerful metaphor for what was going on here. The main thing, to go back to our story of King Amaziah, was the fact that God himself comes down on Amaziah for being unnecessarily cruel in war. In other words, war says, okay, it's necessary, whatever whatever the reason that there's a war. But within the war, you can be morally right or not right. And in this case, there was a situation where Amatzia ordered the awful death of his enemies by throwing them off the top of a mountain. Again, he's castigated for that by saying that that is not the way. That's not the Jewish way of treating your enemies.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mordecai. Anyone out there again who missed the article, the link is below in the video description, along with a bonus link where you can go read Mordecai's website with more of his reflections. Thank you so much for chatting with us today.